Get ready to take a flamethrower to the official narrative and learn what the elites don't want you to know. You're listening to The Tom Woods Show.
Hi everybody, Tom Woods here. It is episode 2709, if you can believe that, of The Tom Woods Show. And I am delighted to have as our guest today Yaakov Shapiro, who is an international speaker, author, and pulpit rabbi for over 30 years, now emeritus. He's a prolific writer. His most recent work is the enormous 1,381-page The Empty Wagon, Zionism's Journey from Identity Crisis to Identity Theft, which is a treatise on the differences between Judaism and Zionism. Rabbi Shapiro, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Can you start off by telling us a bit about your background?
My background is kind of boring. I was born in New York. I lived a little in Jersey, and I now live again in New York. I was born an Orthodox Jew, still am an Orthodox Jew. I chose to be a rabbi because I want a reward in the afterlife for serving God in this world. I believe in Judaism. And I've been a rabbi for 30 years, a bit more approximately. I've written books, I speak a lot, and probably what your audience knows me for is my stance on Zionism, which I have studied for a very long time, all of my adult life and most of my adolescent life as well. And I've come to the conclusion that, well, the more you know about Zionism, the harder it is to be a Zionist, especially if you're Jewish, and especially if you're an Orthodox Jew. There's like no room for compatibility over there. And both in terms of the religion and outside of the religion, in terms of just practicality, Zionism is a liability to the Jews, not even a liability in the net. It's a liability, period, with nothing on the asset side. And it's something that Jews need, if not to actively try to dismantle Zionism, but at the very least to disavow.
I've become familiar with your arguments, and you are not making utilitarian arguments. You're making theological arguments primarily, but I do want to ask how you would respond to the utilitarian argument that's been made that goes like this, that Jewish people have been subject to persecution in a great many places, and one way we can try to prevent harm to Jews in the future is by giving them a land of their own, so that they're not strangers in other people's lands. Could you at least make a utilitarian argument of that sort?
I make many utilitarian arguments about Zionism. In fact, I've addressed that many times. The first argument is, well, how's that working out for you? They created the state of Israel, which is statistically the most dangerous place for Jews to live where Jews live. The odds of you getting killed in Israel because you're Jewish is astronomically greater than anywhere else in the world. And the amount of Jews killed in Israel because they're Jews since Israel started in 1948 is greater than the total amount of Jews killed everywhere else in the world because they're Jews, including Gulag deaths in Soviet Russia. So it was a failure if that's the case. But more importantly, let me ask you something. What if there is no Holocaust for the next 1,000 years or 500 years? What if the world is now at peace? And of course, there's anti-Semitism. But my question is, it takes wars and a lot of resources to maintain this state of Israel. There's no question about it, right? These wars and the resources that it takes to maintain are a premium for this insurance policy that you're describing. Here's my question. At what point does this premium become too expensive? How many Jews, never mind Palestinians, never mind other human beings, I'm just talking purely from the Zionist perspective. Give me a number. How many Jews have to die? How many people have to be killed in wars? How many soldiers have to commit suicide? How much trauma does the Jewish people have to go through before this premium becomes too expensive? What if in 100 years from now, there is no Holocaust and Jews live like they live now in every democratic country? Yes, there's anti-Semitism, which means every once in a while, I've lived in New York almost all my life, and I've had more trouble, more harassment from Zionists than I do from anti-Semites. But let's assume that the level of anti-Semitism more or less stays the same as it is now, which is high compared to other times in my lifetime. No one's killing Jews because they're Jews. Certainly not as much as they are in Israel. We don't need to fight wars because we want to be here. Tell me, at what point does this premium that Jewish people have to pay? Again, never mind, I'm not talking about the Palestinians, and please, nobody write in the comments to this video, oh, look, he doesn't care about Palestinians. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about something else, purely from a Zionist perspective. At what point in time does it become too expensive? I live near the water, between the Atlantic Ocean and Jamaica Bay. After Hurricane Sandy, it became almost impossible for us to get flood insurance, extremely expensive. Understood. People want flood insurance, but not everybody can afford it. At what point, how many Jews is it worth? Very simple. Dying, being killed. So that in case there's a event such as a Holocaust, in some time in the future, if there is, and if we could make it to Israel, and if Israel will take us. Israel claims to be able to take in all the Jews, but when push comes to shove, as we saw, for example, in Argentina by the juntas, when the Jews are in trouble, unless Israel benefits, they're not necessarily coming to the rescue of Jews. Assuming we can get to Israel, assuming Israel will allow us in, and assuming Israel is safe, because it's very likely that people in Israel will have to move out of Israel if, let's say, Iran gets a nuclear bomb or something, or the most dangerous places is. But let's assume the confluence of all these things come true. Give me a number. How many Jews is it worth being killed for this insurance policy? So that's first. Mathematically, it does make sense. Secondly, come on. There are plenty of persecuted people in the world. Black people were persecuted here in this country. They were dragged here in chains from Africa to be slaves. Maybe we should make a black state, send all the blacks there, and that'll solve the problem of blacks being persecuted. There are all sorts of persecuted minorities all over, right? Maybe everybody should that's the solution for civilization. All the persecuted people should make their own countries or states, live there, and then everybody's happy. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think it's more important, more efficient, more logical, and more civilized that we should work on anti-Semitism and various forms of racism and oppression of minorities where we are.
All right, let me ask you this. Early on, as Zionism is being discussed, but before there is a state of Israel created, it was not uncommon for Jews to say Zionism is at odds with our beliefs because, for one thing, it's an act of hubris to think that God's promise can be accomplished by human effort. So there was debate about Zionism, but nowadays, to find somebody who has your point of view on it is much more difficult now. And so some people might say, well, there aren't very many Jews who hold your opinion, so they think that by virtue of that, you must be wrong. Why don't more Jews have your opinion of this?
Well, mostly, first of all, I'm not sure what you mean by most Jews don't have my opinion. Let's do the math, okay? And first, if I may make a theological argument, because you mentioned it, what you said about an act of hubris because they're jumping the gun and sending the Jews to the Holy Lands before the Messiah, that is not the main argument against Zionism, and that's not the main reason to oppose it. The Zionists put that forth as presenting their opponents as having that argument. And they do that for two reasons. Reason number one, they want the argument against Zionism to be purely theological, as if to position themselves as saying, well, we're the practical ones. Those Orthodox Jews that are against Zionism, they have this religious thing. But look, there's Holocaust, there's pogroms, persecutions. We're the practical ones. They're the ones who are, they're setting us up to be religious fanatics that aren't interested in our own safety. That's one reason they do this. Number two, they want to set themselves up for having a false argument. Namely, everybody's a Zionist. Everybody believes that Israel belongs to the Jews. The only question is when. They believe it'll happen in the future. In fact, there are anti-Semites that run around on social media saying that even the anti-Zionist Jews want to kill all the Palestinians, just they're waiting for their Messiah to do so. That entire argument is false. There will never be a Jewish state ever, the way Israel defines it, ever. The Messiah is going to be a spiritual renewal of the world. It'll bring peace into the world, as the prophet says, there won't be any more wars. So, and what Israel is today, we will never have, we have no interest in. But they're setting themselves up for that argument, as well as many others. The main argument against Zionism, although that is an argument, it is prohibited for the Jews to have a state before the Messiah comes. And I don't know why anybody would say more Jews like me don't believe it. The fact is that the state exists, but there's nothing I can do about it, nor can any other anti-Zionist Jews do anything about it as of now. So how does anybody know how many Jews agree with me? That's first on that issue. That's my first question. In the social media, they say so, because, well, if they're Jews, I'll give you an example. There are Jewish religious parties, political parties in the Israeli government that believe it's prohibited to have a state of Israel. But they're in the government anyway in order to protect the interests of the Orthodox Jews, in the same way that there are Arab parties in the government, or some of them try to be. That doesn't make them Zionists, nor does it may mean that they accept Israel. There are plenty of Orthodox Jews, even those who are in the government in Israel, that believe the whole thing is prohibited, but there's nothing to do about it. And the only thing we can do now is protect our interests. So I don't know where that number is coming from. In fact, the largest Jewish educational institution in this country, a yeshiva in Ocean County, New Jersey, massive institution, by far the largest Jewish educational institution, post-secondary, recently the four deans put out a declaration that is prohibited by Jewish law for anybody to vote in the WZO, World Zionist Organization, elections, because it's prohibited to even join with the Zionists, even if you're not a Zionist. It's like joining another religion, so to speak, joining idol worshippers. Not only that, but everybody knows that the largest congregation, Jewish congregation in the world, are the Satmar Hasidim, who are the most anti-Zionist in the world. So I'll bet that your listeners did not know about the Lakewood Yeshiva in Ocean County. And that not only that, but let's talk about political organizations. Agudath Israel, who is also their Council of Torah Sages, put out a declaration prohibiting any Jew from voting in the World Zionist Organization, because Zionism is prohibited according to the Jewish religion. So the fact that people are not going on podcasts, which is what you see, or writing books like I am, does not indicate that they're not in agreement with me. Many are, much more than you think. But the main argument against Zionism is that Zionism actually, and both the Zionists and the anti-Zionists agree with this fact, that Zionism redefines what it means to be a Jew. Mm. Being a Jew, the definition of a Jew, is a religion. Now, at this point, you or your viewers are wondering, but aren't there non-religious Jews? There's something about Judaism that I need to explain in order for people to understand that. Other religions, perhaps all other religions, I'm not familiar, but Christianity, Islam, the religions that I'm familiar with, say that everybody in the world has to follow God's law. So Christians, if you want to be saved, everybody in the world has to be a Christian. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, whosoever shall believeth in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. You are either Christian or you're not saved. Islam, same thing. Everybody has to be a Muslim. In Judaism, that's not the case.
A lot of us are already thinking about Christmas, and what do you get for the person who has everything? Well, how about a unique gift and something they really want to boot? I'm talking steak. During Omaha Steak's Sizzle All the Way sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. And because you're a Tom Woods listener, you can take another $35 off with promo code WOODS at checkout. Omaha Steaks delivers an exclusive lineup of USDA-certified tender steaks, and their fan-favorite filet mignons have achieved the distinction of USDA-certified very tender. Omaha Steaks is a family-owned company with over 100 years of experience in the meat industry. And by the way, they also carry mouth-watering burgers, chicken, pork, seafood, cozy and convenient comfort meals, and delectable desserts. We here in the Woods family first started getting Omaha steaks delivered at least 15 years ago, and you can't beat the convenience and value. Plus, orders placed by 6 p.m. Eastern Time ship same day. Omaha Steaks offers unrivaled quality and variety. Every bite is backed by their 100% guarantee. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness and hand-cut by master butchers in America's heartland. In fact, Omaha Steaks has been America's original butcher since 1917. Save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code WOODS at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code WOODS.
Not everybody is obligated to follow the Torah. There are two covenants. You could even say two religions, but that's more of a confusing term. There are two covenants that exist for humanity according to Judaism. When Noah came out of his ark, God gave Noah a covenant consisting of 7 Noahide laws, we call them. You can't steal, you can't kill, you have to set up a system of civil law. You have to, cruelty to animals is prohibited. 7 basic things. You can't worship idols. All of humanity is obligated to follow those 7 laws. Approximately 800 years later, there's the story in Exodus, the book of Exodus, where God gave Moses and the Jewish people the Torah at Mount Sinai. That was a different covenant that has 613 laws. Not everybody is obligated to follow those laws. Only certain people are. We call those people Jews, as opposed to non-Jews or Noahides who have to follow the Noahide covenant. So the word Jew in Judaism, when used in that sense, saying they are secular Jews, is designed to distinguish between which covenant are you obligated to follow, the Moses covenant or the Noah covenant. So if you could have a secular Jew, in Christianity, if you want, everybody in the world is obligated to follow Christianity. So the word Christian is only needed to distinguish between those who do follow Christianity and those who don't. Same thing with Islam. But in Judaism, you need 2 categories. One, those who are obligated to follow the Mosaic covenant, and those who are obligated, not necessarily do they comply, with those who are obligated to follow the Noahide covenant. Jews, when you say somebody's a Jew and you say somebody's a secular Jew, that means this secular Jew is obligated by Jewish law to follow the Jewish Mosaic covenant. And if, let's say, he says, I want to be religious, what religion should I have? We tell him, okay, you're Jewish, you got to follow the 613 commandments. Somebody else who's not Jewish, we tell him, you want to be Jewish and you want to follow Judaism? Judaism says you have to follow the 7 Noahide laws. No more idol worship for you. No more pulling limbs off live animals and eating it for you. No more killing or stealing for you, etc. That is what the word Jew means in that context. So you can have secular Jews, which means non-compliant Jews. There's no such thing as a non-compliant Christian, because if you're not Christian, then you're not compliant with what you're supposed to do. But in Judaism, you have to know which set of laws you are obligated to follow. A secular Jew is the same as saying a non-compliant Jew. But a non-Jew can be non-compliant with his covenant too. That's why we have secular Jews, because we have 2 covenants. However, a Jew who is secular their words for Islam has a word for this also. It's almost the same word in Hebrew as in Arabic. They're called kofrim, deniers. They are considered for all practical purposes, non-practicing Jews are considered for many purposes the same as people who are not Jewish. Because being Jewish is not an ethnicity. Being Jewish they have no privileges of Jews. They have our relationship to them changes. It's not the same as a relationship to another religious Jew. Which is, by the way, this is why Jews don't proselytize. Christians proselytize because they're saving somebody by making him Christian, according to their belief. Muslims do dawah because they're saving somebody by making him a Muslim. Jews don't proselytize for conversion because non-Jews are perfectly entitled to be non-Jews. There's no reason to convert them. If they want to, they gladly. And they gain by doing so because, like everywhere in every other context, with greater responsibility, which Jews have, is greater compensation. So it's better to be a Jew, but there's more responsibility. It's up to you if you want to do it or not, but you don't have to. In fact, if somebody converts to Judaism and they're not religious, it's a bad thing. You didn't do them any favors, because now it's like giving them more responsibilities and they're not following them. Better they should have had the lesser level of responsibilities. That's why Jews don't proselytize. But Judaism is a religion and it's a meritocracy. If you are not religious, put it this way, as a rabbi, I can tell you that a godless heretic such as Theodore Herzl is further from God than the average law-abiding Muslim who doesn't worship idols, believes in monotheistic God, doesn't kill, doesn't steal, follows some case of civil law. Herzl was Jewish, and by that I mean he was obligated to follow the Torah. He didn't. He didn't believe in it. He was a heretic. He's considered further from God than a non-Jewish person that follows the Noahide laws. So that's what a Jew is. Judaism is a religion, and every single Jew for thousands of years understood this. There's a quote, the succinct quote from about 1,000 years ago, Rabbi Saadia Gaon, a Jewish rabbi that lived in Egypt. Our nation is only a nation because we have the law. And by the way, he wrote that in Arabic, and the Arabic word he used for Torah is Sharia. Our religious law, our Sharia, is what makes us Jews. In context, he was talking about interreligious debates, and there are other religions that believe that God took the law from the Jews and gave it to another people. Rabbi Saadia quotes from the Bible, showing that the verses say that Jews will always exist. If it was true that God took the law from the Jews and gave it to someone else, then we wouldn't be Jews anymore. There would be no Jews. We became Jews when God gave the law to Moses on Mount Sinai. That's what it means to be Jewish, to be deputized, to be part of that covenant with God. And that's all it ever meant. In fact, Theodore Herzl wrote in his diary in 1895 that our people are a people only through their faith. Before Zionism came, this was. Zion, and there were all sorts of different break-off sects from the Jews. There was the Sadducees, there was the Reform Jews, the Conservative Jews, all sorts of denominations, but every single one of them understood that Jews are a religion. There were maybe some quirky exceptions, perhaps Benedict Spinoza, depending upon who you ask. But by and large, there was no critical mass of Jews at all that ever said being Jewish is not a religion until Bolsheviks and Zionists came, until approximately that time period where we'll talk about the Zionists now. The Bolsheviks had the same sin, but the Zionists said, no, being Jewish is not only a religious belief. In fact, this is not my interpretation of Zionism. It's Israel's Supreme Court, their academics, and their politicians. I have in front of me an Israeli Supreme Court case transcripts, 2008. Do you know that in Israeli law, there is no such thing as an Israeli nationality? Israeli citizens are divided up in Israel by various categories. Their citizenship, nationality, religion. Religion is whatever your religion you are. Citizenship, you're Israeli. But your nationality, there's no such thing as an Israeli nationality. Being Jewish is a nationality. Druze is a nationality. Arab is a nationality. There's about 120, 130 nationalities. But being Jewish is a nationality. And Israel was sued many times by various appellants saying, we want Israeli to be a nationality. The Israeli Supreme Court ruled, no, we cannot have an Israeli nationality. And the reason is, Justice Uzi Vogelman said, the foundation stone of Zionism is that the Jews are not only a religious nationality, a religious identity, but a national identity. The Zionists changed the Jews from being in the category as Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Jews. Now, there's Spanish, French, British, and Jews. Jews are a nationality like the rest. And just as Greece had a religion, the Greeks worshipped Zeus, others worshipped Odin, others worshipped other gods. And there's even an official Church of England to this day. The Jews are a people. They are a nationality. And they had a religion, Judaism, but that's not what makes you Jewish. You could be an equally good Jew, loyal Jew, if you're loyal to the people. What makes a person a good Jew? Judaism believes, well, if you follow God's law, that makes you a good Jew. It may not make you a good American, may not make you a good father or mother, but a Jew means a good Jew, and a loyal Jew means loyal to God. To Zionists, a good Jew means loyal to the people, just like what makes you a good Frenchman, a good Spaniard. They changed the entire definition of what it is to be a Jew. That was the main objection to Zionism, and it still is. And the reason why so many Jews aren't anti-Zionist is because Zionism hides really what Zionism is. Here's a simple question for any of your viewers. And I have books where people actually asked other people, what do you think the answer is? The question is, what does a Jewish state mean? Israel, by its law, is a Jewish state. In fact, it's the nation state of the Jews. What does it mean? And if you ask 10 Jews, you get 10 different answers. The state of Israel answers it. And Israel's website, it was Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was written by Victor Lieberman. Now I think Victor Lieberman is out of that ministry. Now I think it's on their consulate website. The definition of a Jewish state is nationality. That what France is to the French and Japan is to the Japanese, Israel is to the Jews. Without Zionism, what France is to the French and Japan is to the Japanese, Israel is to the Israelis. But there is no Israeli nationality. Zionism decided being Jewish is a nationality, and step 2, Israel is the state of that nationality. Israel decided it's my state. Israel decided that Jews are a nation, and Israel is the nation state of the Jews. The 2018 nation state law in Israel says that Israel is not the state of the Israelis. Only Jews have self-determination rights in Israel. That means that if you're not Jewish, you're Muslim, Hindu, Christian, whatever, you have individual rights. You could even rise to be a Supreme Court justice, which Zionists use to demonstrate how Israel is a democracy. But that's only so long as the non-Jewish population is a minority in Israel. Then they could individually be whatever they want. But only the Jewish people have rights to self-determination in Israel. Should Israel face what they call a demographic threat, and the non-Jewish population in Israel seems to be becoming a majority, Israel has a problem, and they have to do something about that. What will they do? Well, they could either make laws that the minority will rule over the majority. They could either do things to make sure that many of these non-Jews never become citizens and never become real Israelis, which is why they never annexed the West Bank and Gaza. Because if they do, the Jewish majority will be threatened. And what they did was they changed the definition of Jew. And I have in front of me here, Benjamin Netanyahu wrote a book. I don't want to offend any of you viewers by showing his picture. A Place Among the Nations. He explains over here why, in his view, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Now, you can have all sorts of reasons for that. This is the Prime Minister of Israel explaining what it is. Quote, "I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist," is the equivalent of, quote, "I'm not anti-American, I just think the United States shouldn't exist." In other words, if you don't have France, there are no Frenchmen. So you can't say, I am for the French identity, but against the existence of France. You really could. You could be like the Kurds, but let's take his premise. You can't say that I'm for the British identity and against the existence of Britain. By the same token, you cannot say I'm for the Jewish identity and against the existence of the Jewish state. So by definition, remember, France is to the French what Israel is to the Jews. Without France, we're assuming this. It's not true, but let's assume. Without France, there's no French. Without Israel, there are no Jews. Israel is the state of the Jews. That's the main objection to Zionism, is they literally changed what it means to be a Jew. This was old Zionist literature and there's old Zionist thinkers. They decided this, and it's logically unintelligible. It makes no sense.
Hey, everybody, this open enrollment, don't make the same mistakes again, agreeing to overpriced premiums and fine print that generate unpleasant surprises at all the wrong times. The Woods family ain't playing that game anymore. Affordable Care Act, come on. We ditched the old-fashioned way and embraced crowd health, the alternative to the crazy American health insurance world. With crowd health, we're talking health care for under $100. You get access to a team of health bill negotiators, to low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, as well as to a database of low-cost, high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. And if something major happens, you pay the first $500 and the crowd steps in to fund the rest. And you'll be part of that crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. The system is betting you'll stay stuck in the same overpriced, overcomplicated mess. And this year, it's even worse because most of the Affordable Care Act subsidies expire, which means your prices are going sky high. So this open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code WOODS at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Crowd Health is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, code WOODS. Hey, gang, if you're like me, you've been watching the Fed inflate the dollar into oblivion while politicians bungle trade policy and rack up historic amounts of debt, and you're wondering how to protect what you've worked so hard to build. That's why I want to talk to you about Monetary Metals, a company doing something truly revolutionary with gold. We all know gold is a safe haven asset, but let's face it, most gold just sits there in a vault, not doing much. It holds its value over time, but it doesn't grow. What if I told you there's a way to not only own physical gold, but also earn a yield on it, paid in gold, every single month? That's exactly what I do with Monetary Metals. I lease my gold with them and earn an annual yield, around 4%, in gold, not in paper currency. I keep my ounces, and every month I get more. So think about it. You still benefit from any price appreciation, like what we've been seeing in 2025 with gold pushing past all-time highs, and you also get paid more ounces of gold along the way. That's what makes this model so exciting. It's a genuine breakthrough. For the first time in decades, gold is functioning as a yield-bearing asset, just like in the classical gold standard days. The Fed can print dollars. They can't print gold. It's time to start growing your wealth in ounces, not just hoping for the best with fiat. Go to monetary-metals.com/woods to learn more and see how you can start earning a gold income too. That's monetary-metals.com/woods.
And here's where I say that the main arguments that I make against Zionism, besides it's against the religion of Judaism, these arguments that I'm making now are not theological. They're simply logical. Here, let me ask you this. Every other nationality in the world, you can become nationalized into, right? Let's say I want to become an Italian. So I become I become naturalized and become an Italian. And even an ethnic Italian. If I marry an Italian girl, have Italian children, wave an Italian flag, fly Alitalia, sing opera music, whatever the Italian culture is, after 1,000 generations, I'm indistinguishable from any other Italian. 1,000 generations. Could anybody disagree with that? But how do you become a member of this Jewish nation? If you are not Jewish, you could be the biggest, the most loyal Zionist, the most patriot to the state of Israel. You could fight in the IDF, do whatever the Zionists want. But if you could marry a Jewish man, you're a woman, you marry a Jewish man. After 1,000 generations of that, you're indistinguishable from any other Israeli. But according to Israeli law, since by the laws of the Jewish religion, you're not Jewish, you are not part of the Jewish nation. The only way to become part of this Jewish nationality is by a religious conversion, even though being religious is not a requirement to be part of the nation. It is the only country like this. It makes no sense. Imagine, there was a Supreme Court case in Israel. There was a Jewish guy, born Jewish. His name was Daniel Refusion. He grew up, converted to Christianity, became a Carmelite monk. His name was Brother Daniel. Sorry, his name was Oswald Refusion. His birth name, and he became Brother Daniel, Carmelite monk. This was before Israel was founded. After Israel was founded, he came to Israel and he said, I want to emigrate here under the law of return because I'm Jewish. I'm Jewish by nationality. I'm Jewish by ethnicity. I'm Jewish by every standard. I just believe Jesus is the Messiah. Israel's Supreme Court said he's not Jewish because he believes in Christianity. Every other nationality, you could believe in whatever religion you want and not lose your nationality. In Israel, you could be an atheist and you're qualified for the law of return. If you believe in no God, you're qualified for the law of return because they don't believe Judaism is a religion. It's a nationality. Certainly the religion is not required. But if you believe in a God, but he's a Trinity, you're not Jewish. You could believe in no Messiah, and that's okay for the law of return. But if you believe and you're born Jewish, we're talking about a guy who's born Jewish, you believe that there is a Messiah, but it's Jesus, you're not Jewish. Now imagine Brother Daniel. He went to Israel under, they accepted him under naturalization, but he was not considered Jewish. He was considered an Israeli citizen, but not part of the Jewish nation. Now imagine a Brother Daniel comes to Israel and says, you know what, guys? I decide I'm becoming an atheist. I don't believe in Christianity anymore. I don't believe in nothing. You're an atheist? Now you're Jewish. Imagine this. Now, the founding fathers of Israel, Ben-Gurion, Herzl, these guys, they were not religious. They were actually anti-religious. Herzl, you know the old Jewish joke. What's the difference between Herzl and Jesus? Jesus celebrated Hanukkah. Herzl celebrated Christmas.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Okay. Now, Ben-Gurion didn't like Judaism. Herzl didn't like Judaism. Benjamin Netanyahu, completely non-observant. Nothing he does has anything to do with the religion. Not religious at all. All of these guys, not at all. But listen to this. Imagine a guy comes and he wants to join the Jewish nation. Let's say he's a Druze, Zionist. They fight in the IDF. They're loyal Zionists, loyal Israelis, the Druze. He comes saying, you know what? I love this Jewish nation. I want to be part of this Jewish nation. And here's what I did to be part of the Jewish nation. I named myself after, you know what? Benjamin Netanyahu. He's my role model. I love him. He's God. I had plastic surgery to look like Benjamin Netanyahu. I changed my name to Benjamin Netanyahu. I bowed down to his picture every day. And I am just like him. And I want to be Jewish like he's Jewish. And I want to be part of the Jewish nation just like him. And my kids, one of them, I had plastic surgery. He looks like Ariel Sharon. The other one, she looks like Golda Meir. The third one, we want to be just like you guys. And they say, you can't because you're not Jewish by religion. You're not good enough. You're not Jewish enough to become part of this Jewish nation. If Netanyahu would have wanted to convert from being a non-Jew and be what he is today, they would not accept him. So, number one, they claim being Jewish is a nationality. They accept atheists, but not Jews that believe in other religions as Jews for the law of return. In Israel proper, they claim being Jewish is a nationality. What France is to the French, Israel is to the Jews. It's a nationality, not a religion, but there's no way to join this nationality besides a religious conversion. The flip side of this is that if, let's say, somebody wants to become a part of this Jewish nationality, according to Israel, the nationality that does not exist, there is no Jewish nationality. There's a Jewish religion. So you come to a rabbi, perhaps an anti-Zionist rabbi that doesn't believe Israel is the Jewish state. It doesn't believe that Israel has anything to do with the Jewish people. This guy comes to me and says, I say, you know what? You want to convert, you have to be religious. That's the rule. You have to be religious. Well, I want to be a Zionist. I would say, nope, that's against Judaism. You can't. Okay, I'm an anti-Zionist. If you say so, no problem. I'm against Zionism. I hate Zionism. I believe everything you do, Rabbi Shapiro, will convert you. Israel will accept that person for the law of return. The entire Zionism is incoherent because they try to take a Jew, they try to take the Jewish people and redefine them. It's like taking a cat and trying to redefine it and make it into a chair. It doesn't fit. It's like You could say that the Jews are a nationality, they're a nation, but you want to retain the identity of the Jews and just change their definition. You can't retain something's identity and radically change its definition. You can't. You can't say that a dog is a cat and keep the characteristics of a dog. Then you're redefining all dogs, but they don't want to do that.
Well, let me give you the example of a Catholic who goes to Mass on Easter and Christmas. That's it. Now, the church teaches you have to go to Mass every Sunday.
Right.
So, either you're going to follow that or you're not.
Right.
So a lot of people would say, well, somebody like that who doesn't really observe, any of the moral requirements or even the ritualistic requirements, it's hard to really call that person a Catholic. But he may think he is because he goes on Easter and Christmas. Well, likewise, we all know, everybody listening to this knows in their lives somebody who will say, I don't believe in God, but I look forward to, let's say the Passover Seder because I think of it as a really moving communal observance. And they say, I'm Jewish. What do you say to those people?
If they're born Jewish, that means they're obligated in the Mosaic covenant. Now, such a person, according to Jewish law, the threshold of being considered a believing Jew, an observing Jew, as opposed to a kofar, as opposed to a heretic, is that you have to believe in the 13 principles of Judaism. It's belief. You have to believe in God. You have to believe in the right God. Those are the first four, the descriptions of God. You have to believe that God gave the Torah to Moses. You have to believe in reward and punishment. If you believe in those and you sin, then you're a sinner. A sinner that is a Jewish sinner is still considered a Jew. Nobody's perfect. As the verse says in the Bible, there is no righteous man that's purely righteous and doesn't sin. Nobody's perfect. But you have to believe in the rule. You have to be committed, even if you're not compliant. But you have to be committed. And the committed means you have to believe in these 13 things. If you don't believe in God, then you're not practicing Judaism. Let's say in your example, Tom, if somebody says, I'm going to the Passover Seder because Jesus said to have a Passover Seder. Jesus' Last Supper was a Passover Seder, from what I understand. I believe that Jesus commanded me to have a Passover Seder. Would you consider that person following Judaism by having that Passover Seder?
I would not.
Right. And if a person says, I don't believe in God, this is not a commandment. This has nothing to do with the Exodus from Egypt. I don't even believe in that. I like drinking a little wine, eating a little matzah. That is equally not a Jewish act. The act of drinking wine and eating matzah and having a Passover Seder only has meaning as a Jewish act if you believe that it comes from the Jewish religion. If you believe it comes from Jesus or from your own culture, that's a cultural act, a Christian act, but it's not a Jewish act.
So you've spent your life an Orthodox Jew. As you were growing up, did you encounter within your community a diversity of opinions on Zionism? Or, surely somebody must have taken the pro-Zionist point of view.
All the time. I meet them all the time. But here's the thing. The thing is that the reason why so many people are Zionists, as I said, they don't even know what Zionism is. If you ask a Jew, one of these Zionist Jews, okay, do you believe Israel's a Jewish state? Yes, of course. Do you know what it means that Israel's a Jewish state? I've done this even on podcasts, Jewish people. And they say what? And I tell them, it means that the Jewish people are nationality and Israel is its state. Israel is to you what France is to a French guy. You have two Americans. One's Jewish, one's non-Jewish. What America is to the non-Jewish American, Israel is to the Jewish American. Do you believe that? Do you believe Israel is your country and Israel is to you what the United States of America is to your non-Jewish neighbor? It's like, no, I don't believe that. Well, guess what? You're an anti-Zionist. Now, people don't understand what Zionism means. People think that Zionism means the right of the Jews to self-determination, or it means that Jews could be like everybody else, or all sorts of different things. But I'm talking about what Zionism really means and the difference between Israel's behavior is very predictable. Very predictable if you understand that Zionism is their motivating ideology. You could believe in communism. What's communism? Well, Imagine somebody says communism, equal rights for everybody. That's communism. And was that really communism? But imagine if the communists, imagine Soviet Russia would send out propaganda, and they actually, I know some Russians from Soviet Russia that actually were educated similar to this, that communism just means equal rights as opposed to capitalism, which means that a baseball player can make 1 million times more than a school teacher, and that anybody can take whatever they want and exploit the masses. Imagine such propaganda. People would say, well, I'm a communist. I believe in equal rights for everybody. I believe everyone should have equal opportunities, right? Now, that's not really communism. Israel goes around saying, you know what Zionism is? A safe place for the Jews. That was the first question you asked me. Safe place for the Jews. It's a safe place for the Jews. What if there's another Holocaust? What if Zoran Mamdani, who is a Muslim, gets elected mayor of New York City? And because he's a Muslim, that means he hates Jews. And because he hates Jews, that means he's a danger for the Jews. All Jews have to move out of New York City. Where are you going to move? Move to Israel. By the way, that's nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. But that's Israel's propaganda. Your first question, and because it was the same reason it was your first question to me, is the reason why people accept Zionism, because they believe not in the ideology of Zionism. They don't even know what it is. They don't even know what Zionism is ideologically. They don't know why. They think that Israel does whatever it does for self-defense, but really there's an ideology called Zionism that's motivating them. And the reason why people are Zionists is because Zionism is portrayed as safety and security for the Jewish people. It's portrayed as a benefit for the Jewish people, a safety gap, a bulwark against anti-Semitism, against more Hitlers, which are coming up every day, right? All the time. And that's why Zionist propaganda involves so much overblowing of anti-Semitism, because the more Jews have in front and center of their mind anti-Semitism, the more they will accept what Zionism claims to offer. But underneath Zionism, there's a whole ideology. It's an incoherent, nonsensical, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic ideology, because I got to tell you, if somebody says, I am less American than my non-Jewish neighbor, or I am somehow connected to some foreign country that was created in 1948, that's anti-Semitic. And the Jews once understood that. In Britain, when the Balfour Declaration came out in 1917, there was one Jewish member of the cabinet in Britain. His name was Edwin Montague. He came out against the Balfour Declaration. He said it's going to make Jews foreigners in their own country, which it has. And that's why people, this dual loyalty thing, this idea that Jews are all loyal to Israel, this is all Zionism. These are anti-Semitic tropes. Adolf Hitler, in chapter 2 of Mein Kampf, it's called My Life in Vienna. In that chapter, he says Jews are not a religion. Their biggest lie, he says, that Jews claim they're just regular Germans like other Germans, but they have a different religion. It's a lie. They're a completely different people. And any doubt that I had, this is what Hitler says. You go to an online version of Mein Kampf and punch in Zionism or Zionist. This is what will come up. Hitler said, any doubt that I had that the Jews are just Germans with a different religion was alleviated by this movement among the Jews called Zionism, which emphasizes the nationalist identity of the Jewish people. And even though they're Jews that are not Zionists, or against Zionists, they don't disavow the Zionists. And therefore, they're really lying. And today, you see amongst anti-Semites, they say there really are no anti-Zionist Jews. It's just controlled opposition. They got this from Adolf Hitler, chapter 2, Mein Kampf. So the idea that the Jews are a nation and they have a foreign country, Israel, not merely that it's a service provider, that it is the country of the Jews. Benjamin Netanyahu always says he speaks for the Jews. Before he came to America to address our Congress during Barack Obama's administration to try to convince them not to accept Obama's Iran deal, he said, I come representing not only those that voted for me, but all Jews all over the world. How in the world does a foreign head of state have the gall to claim that he represents me? Well, I'm part of the Jewish nation, And he's the prime minister of the state of Israel, which is the state of the Jews. Israel as a nationality does not exist by Israeli law. By the way, Israel, to show you how much Israel hides this stuff on Israeli passports. If you know anybody with an Israeli passport, under nationality law, it says Israeli. But by Israeli law, that's not really the nationality. The nationality is Jewish. So yeah, sure. Like I said, the more you know about Zionism, the harder it is to be a Zionist. Last night, in my house here, I had a class of yeshiva students, about, I would say, 17 years old, that age. Their rabbi brought them to my house to speak about Zionism. They were here for 4 hours, from 10:30 to 2:30 a.m., okay? When they came out, there were things they never heard. My book, as you mentioned, is almost 1,400 pages. There's a reason for that. It wasn't because I was trying to write as much as possible. I was trying to make an argument. But in order to do that, you have to start from the beginning. What are the Jews? What is Israel? What is Zionism? When Israel claims that it is my state, I mean, by international law, I have a right to change my nationality, as you know, if I want. If I don't like my president, if I don't like my country, I do. I like my country. I'm not going to talk about the president right now, but if I don't like my president or my country, I could move to Mexico and become a Mexican national. If I don't like Mexico, I can go to Brazil and become a Brazilian national and keep going south until I get close to Antarctica or east or west. But no matter where I go, no matter what country I'm in, because I'm born Jewish, because I'm born to a Jewish mother, Benjamin Netanyahu claims he's my prime minister and Israel claims that's my state. Tell me that's not anti-Semitic. Tell me that doesn't increase attacks on Jews, which it does. Tell me that doesn't fuel anti-Semitic tropes of dual loyalty. Israel is a danger to Jews. Tell me, this is not a theological argument. If I'd be a secular Jew, this would be exactly the same. Edwin Montague, Zionism is absolutely incoherent. Zionism is inherently illogical. It makes no sense. And it's a danger to Jews all over the world. And that's why there's so many Jews that are Zionists, because they don't know what Zionism is. You could make people communists. Let me ask you something, Tom. There are so many people that vote for all sorts of crazy candidates for office. I don't even have to name names. Whoever you consider a crazy candidate, you don't even have to name names. How do they get so many votes? Well, the answer is because of the advertising, the propaganda, and the campaigning, and their false beliefs that this candidate is going to be good for them. By the same token, that's why so many people are Zionists, because Zionists are the best in the world at propaganda. They have their ministry of propaganda. They actually have a ministry of Hasbara, and everybody knows their PR, their propaganda, their advertising for Israel. Right now, they spend millions of dollars on, oh my gosh, TikTok influencers. Tell me, you want to know why so many people are Zionists? Just ask the Zionists. How do you think what would be the best way to make people Zionists? So if you ask me what would be the best way to make people Orthodox Jews, I'll say teach them about Jewish Orthodox Judaism. Bring them to experience Jewish Orthodox life. You ask Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, what do you think is the best way to make people Zionists? Pay off TikTok influencers. That's why people are Zionists. That's exactly why. The same reason why people vote for whatever candidate you have in mind that should not be elected, but they get so many votes and you're thinking in your head, what idiots? Well, there's propaganda, there's campaigning, and there's misinformation, disinformation, and their false belief that this candidate is good for them. Jews believe that Israel is good for them because of their campaign as well. And that's why. It's very simple.
Well, let me ask you, in fact, a theological question, if I may.
Sure.
You said earlier that there will never be a Jewish state the way the Zionists conceive of it.
Correct.
But can you explain to me, how are we to understand God's promises to Abraham and his descendants?
Which promise are we talking about?
Well, anything relating to land specifically. Is there anything about a particular land?
Okay. So there is no question that God promised to Abraham that his seed, and by that in the Jewish religion, that means Isaac and his descendants, as the verse says in the book of Genesis, Ki b'Yitzchak yikar lecha zara, that Yitzchak, Isaac, will be called your seed. That means that Israel, which is a holy land, which is, you could call it in a manner of speaking, God's backyard, God's home. That's the best place to worship God. It's a giant synagogue. That's all it is. It's not a national homeland. And right, in order to answer your theological question, I first need to explain the theological significance of the Holy Land. People say it's a homeland of the Jews or national homeland. That's not true. The word homeland in English doesn't explain much about what a homeland is, but in other languages it does, including modern Hebrew. In French, there's la patria, fatherland. There's mother Russia. In modern Hebrew, a homeland is called moledet. It means the place you were born. I guess you can call it parent land or something like that. And in nationalist philosophy, there's this idea that there's an organic connection between a people and the nation and the land that birthed them. And indeed, in Israel's Declaration of Independence, all the way at the beginning, it says, here the Jewish people were born. According to Judaism, they were born at Mount Sinai. According to Israel, it's a national homeland. There's a political connection. Just as there's a political connection between the Spaniards and Spain, the same type of connection is between Israel and the Jews. There is no such homeland. It doesn't exist. Israel is a holy land. And it means that when the Messiah comes and the world will be in its state of, well, as perfect as a world can be, after the Messiah comes, it will become a spiritual world. The Messiah is not a warrior. The Messiah is not a soldier. The Messiah is a righteous rabbi, which will cause all the Jewish people to repent of all of their sins. And he will be as wise as King Solomon. He will be a wiser than Solomon, a prophet as great as Moses. And he will bring peace to the world. And the Jewish people will all be in the Holy Land. That who's going to be sovereign? A resurrected from the dead King David. Non-Jewish people will be around also. But God will be the ruler, the king of the world. Everybody will be able to see God's glory, and they will see that God and his Torah are true and just, meaning everybody will see the Jewish religion is correct because God will show them. If you don't believe in my religion, I'm not trying to convert you, but if you don't believe in my religion, then you have nothing to worry about over here because none of this, you believe none of this is going to happen. But it is a purely religious and spiritual event, the coming of the Messiah and the existence of the Messiah. There are opinions that amongst our scholars that the holiness of that land in Israel is going to spread all over the world, and the whole world will be the Holy Land, will be Israel. The whole world will be, because the world will have such a level of holiness that the whole world will be Israel. And even if the whole world isn't Israel, that doesn't mean we're not killing the non-Jews. In fact, I have to tell you, Zionists will have less of a share in the world to come, because that's what it is. It's not like an afterlife. We could call it an afterworld. It's an afterworld. It's like a spiritual kind of world. It's true that it will have physicality, but physicality is really only an expression of the will of God. This is all part of the theology. And it doesn't mean we're going to make a war and take over Israel. There won't need to be any wars. Everybody will, like the verse says in Chronicles, Kili sichra kol berech tishava kol loshoin. God says, every knee will bend to me and every tongue will swear in my name. In other words, now we live in a world where everybody has all sorts of ideas. As you said, some Jews are Zionists. There won't be any Zionists when the Messiah comes. They'll see that their Zionism, which is a religion of idol worship. We believe Zionists are idol worshipers. The Orthodox religious Zionists are Orthodox religious idol worshipers. In the same way that the prophet Elijah told the Baal worshipers that if you want to believe in God, in Hashem, then give up your idol worship. If you want to believe in the Baal, which was the idol that they worshipped, then give up Hashem and just be Baal worshippers. We will tell the prophets will tell the Zionists the same thing, but when Messiah comes, it's too late. If you want to be a Zionist, give up Judaism. If you want to be a Jew, give up Zionism. We look at it as a religion of idol worship. Yes, I have a lot in common with the settlers. People can't tell the difference between me and them. It's all right. There's some Muslims that say I look like a certain sheikh, but forget about my looks. We share with the Muslims a monotheistic belief in God. According to Maimonides, the Muslims believe in the same God that we do, exact same God. It's not a question of believing in that God. It's a question of our belief in what the first cause, necessary existence must be, is the same. Do I have that in common with the Muslims? They don't eat pork. I don't eat pork either. I have stuff in common with the Christians. The Old Testament, the Ten Commandments, the belief in creation of the world, the belief in a Messiah, although I don't believe in theirs. And I have things in common with the Zionist religious Jews as well. They eat kosher, they wear a yarmulke like me, and they do many things that I do. But they added to their Judaism that nationalist element, and that nationalist element, because it doesn't exist in Judaism, because it's actually an affront to Judaism, it's considered a form of idol worship. And the reason is because your being a Jew, my being a Jew, my being a Jew, or one's being a Jew, means only one thing: my service to God. My service. That's all it is. Being a Jew is being enlisted, is a job description given by God. My only Jewish identity, it's not an ethnicity. There are Jews of all ethnicities, and you can convert to Judaism. Don't go tell me that Ivanka Trump and a Yemenite Jew are of the same ethnicity. It's not a race. There are black Jews, white Jews. It is a covenant. You are a member of a covenant. You're in the service of God. That covenant, that's all that the word Jew means, a member of that covenant. If you add to the word, it means a Jew is in service, in religious service. If you add something to Jewish identity, that's not from the Torah. You say, because I'm Jewish, therefore I must be loyal to the state of Israel. Therefore I'm an Israeli national. Therefore we're a nationality. You're adding something to your Jewish identity, to your service. That's not a service to God. If you want to say I'm loyal to Israel, because you know what, I like Israel's, I like the landscape. So I love Israel. I love Israel because, I don't know, whatever reason a person can have to love it. Not because I'm Jewish. Being Jewish doesn't oblige me to Israel at all. Okay? It's an opinion. It's like a guy who likes chocolate ice cream, right? I like Holland, okay? Because I like the canals. I like Holland, nice quaint place. Amsterdam. Not because I'm Jewish, because I like it. Other people like France. Somebody likes Israel. Whatever, that's his opinion. But if somebody says, because I'm Jewish, therefore I'm connected to Israel, what that means, Israel is part of my service. And that's idol worship. If you say, well, no, being a Jew is not service. Being a Jew is an ethnicity. Well, that's part of your idol worship. Being a Jew is one thing. That's why Zionism is the most dangerous affront to Judaism in history. All the other enemies of Judaism, or let's say alternatives to Judaism, everyone from the inquisitors to the forced conversions to the people that didn't want the Jews to, they said, don't be a Jew. Don't be a Jew. Be this religion or be that religion. Assimilationists said, being Jew is no good. It's silly. We don't want any religion. Zionism says, be a Jew, be a proud Jew, be a strong Jew, love Jews, love the Jewish land. They changed the definition of all the above from religious, from spiritual to political and national. That's why they wanted Israel. Why couldn't they take Uganda? Now, Uganda was less occupied, would have been easier. In fact, the religious Jews who were part of the First Zionist Congress, they voted for Uganda because they said, all we want is a safe place. What is this business of specifically it has to be Palestine? Specifically, they have to speak Hebrew. That has nothing to do with a safe place for Jews. You see, this idea that Israel was designed to be a safe place for Jews does not explain all of why over there specifically. They had other opportunities, would have been that would have been safer. Why create this new language that Jews should speak? Most Zionists spoke Yiddish already. And Herzl himself said that the Jews should not speak Hebrew. He didn't believe that it made any sense. But the Zionists decided no. You know why? Because if you want a nation, the best marketing thing was the Jewish ancient Holy Land. Just change it to a homeland. Make the Jews speak languages, as you know, nationalism language is one of the main, if not the main, uniter of people into a unit, into a people. We're going to give the Jews a language, a flag. Jews never had a flag. There were 12 tribes. Each tribe was a family, so they did have a flag. But the Jews never had a flag because we're not a people in that sense. The tribes were because they were families. The Jews are not a family. Oh, I'm 150th cousin with some other Jew because we're descendant of Abraham or Jacob. What is I don't know if you know any. I have third cousins, fourth cousins, fifth cousins, people who I know. I have nothing to do with them because I'm 150th cousin with another Jew because he's descendant of Jacob. That's not my connection. According to Zionism, make a connection, give them a flag, give them a language, make them feel like a people. Write history books that claim that Jews always strove for national self-determination. When the Jews say next year in Jerusalem, that meant self-determination. It doesn't. Next year in Jerusalem means next year in context in the Passover Seder. It means next year in Jerusalem, we're going to be making animal sacrifices. We should be. We hope to. It's a prayer. When Messiah comes, we'll be making the Passover sacrifice in Jerusalem, and the Messiah will come and the whole exile will be over. I want to tell you something that the Zionists don't tell you when they throw around that next year in Jerusalem chant. Do you know that the Jews in Jerusalem today, Jews living in Jerusalem, at their Pesach Seder, at their Passover Seder, they also pray next year in Jerusalem? Do you know why? Because the Jerusalem they're praying for is not the Jerusalem that exists today. It will be in the same place, but it's a completely different concept. Conceptually, it's a different thing. To borrow a paraphrase, borrow somebody from a pagan Nordic religion. Jerusalem is not a place, it's a concept. It's in a place, but it's a concept as well. You know what the Zionists did? This idea that the Zionists decided that they represent Judaism, which they do, and they represent the Jewish people. There was once a Nordic religion. That's where I borrowed that line from. There was a Nordic religion. They worshipped Odin and the whole lineup of gods, and Thor and Loki and all these guys. It was a religion. Then came a guy by the name of Stan Lee, who decided he's going to make a comic book character out of their gods. And it's good for his business. And he's going to make Thor the Thunder God, and he's going to make a whole plot with personalities out of the Nordic religion. And he did it for his business purposes. Now imagine one day somebody comes to somebody who practiced the Nordic religion back in the day and say, could you explain what Thor did? Well, look at Thor's personality. Is that what you worship? He'll say, that has nothing to do with us. That's a comic book version of what I believe. The Zionists took Judaism, Jewish identity, and made a comic book version out of it for their business plan, their nationalist business plan, because they wanted to be what they wanted to be. Israel, the Jewish concept that Israel portrays is as Jewish as Stan Lee's portrayal of the Nordic religion. Less so, even less. And the way they convince people through their educational system. I have another analogy for you that I give. Let's say I wanted to convince the Christians that they're not really a religion. They're really baseball players. Being a good Christian means to be a good baseball player. So here's what I'll do. Now if I tell them, stop being Christian, stop being Catholic, they're not going to believe. They're not going to cooperate because they want to be Christian. So here's what I'll do. If I don't like the Christian religion, what I'll do is I'll say, be a good Christian. But Christian has nothing to do with popes or messiahs or anything like that. That was invented by priests and religious leaders because Catholics were persecuted, and they had to make up this thing in order to hold on temporarily to their unity. Really, what a Christian is a baseball player. Jesus was the manager, and the Gospels were the all-stars. And it wasn't Messiah. And I would create uniforms, pinstriped uniforms that say Christians across the chest. I would build for them a stadium and make the Christian baseball team and publicize to the world that we have brought Christianity back to its original glory, what it originally was. And I would create a curriculum for school kids from kindergarten all the way up to the mainstream media that explains that the Christians were always ball players and that this religion idea was optional. But because they lost their ability to play ball because of discrimination against Catholics, let's take Catholics now, that's why they ended up believing in all of this stuff. And I will teach them from the time they're in kindergarten all the way, and I will have a lot of PR, and I'm going to promote it. And before you know it, there are going to be a lot of Catholics that'll say, no, in order to be a good Catholic, be a baseball player. That's what the Zionists did with Judaism. Give them a language, give them a flag, write books for them, give them an educational system, teach them that being Jewish is much more than just being religious. The main idea of Judaism, the main component of Jewish identity is national. A religion, that's another thing. The Greeks had a religion, the Spanish had a religion, they have a religion. Now, at the very least, I would like people to appreciate that the Zionists, the Zionists are there in the sense that their own religion. It's not difficult for people to understand. People come to me all the time and they say, Rabbi Shapiro, come on, you and the Zionists may have some internal squabble, but obviously it's the same Orthodox Judaism. Now, Netanyahu's not Orthodox. Most of the Israelis, the vast majority are not Orthodox, like 90% plus. They're not Haredi. There's 750,000 approximately settlers. There are people in Jerusalem, people in certain towns, but the vast majority of Israel is not Haredi. Now, and if you ask in Israel, I have a survey over here. In Israel, the vast majority of Haredim say we are not Zionists. In Israel even, we are not Zionists. But I tell people, Zionists aren't only Jews. There are many more Christian Zionists than there are Jewish Zionists in this country. Many, many, many more. Now, imagine going to the Pope or to the Catholic Church and saying to them, how do you account for your people, these Christian Zionists, doing what they're doing? The Pope would say, hey, excuse me. It's not the same religion. I'm Catholic. Those guys are Protestants. They're restorationists. We have nothing to do with them. I'll say, come on, Pope. Come on, Bishop. You all believe in Jesus. You all believe in the Trinity. You all believe in the New Testament. You believe in the Messiah. Come on. Your internal squabbles, it's the same religion. But the Catholics will tell me, no, we are Catholics. You don't understand. We are not Protestants, and we are not restorationists, and we are not evangelicals. Their evangelicalism is a heresy, or whatever they're going to call it. I really think that people could appreciate that in Judaism we have the same thing. Even though it may look to an outsider, as it does to an outsider of Christianity, that the Catholics and the evangelicals, they're all Christians. It may look that the non-Jewish Orthodox and the Zionist Orthodox are the same religion, but I'm telling you as a rabbi that the distance between the non-Zionist Orthodox Jews and the Zionist Orthodox Jews, like the settlers, is greater. The distance is greater than between the Catholics and the evangelicals. And coming to me, and if somebody asks me, well, there's so many Zionists, it's like coming to a Catholic and saying, in America, there's so many evangelicals, so many Protestants. Doesn't that mean they're right? We know that's not an argument. Religions are based not on how many people there are, but on how many are based on the arguments they have. And it's not only religion, all ideologies are like that. You can't come to somebody and say, hey, there are so many people that don't have your ideology. Well, let them get educated. How many educated people are there?
You could say the same thing about if you poll Christians or Catholics about do you hold this belief or that belief? and they don't hold any of them.
I agree with you. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not an expert at all in Christianity or Catholicism, but I'm sure that the religious Catholics, whatever their beliefs are, they're ready to sit and argue on behalf of those beliefs. Missionaries come to me all the time and try to argue on behalf of Christianity from my texts. And so do Muslims. And there's nothing, that doesn't mean they're right or they're wrong. And it also does not mean that everybody's opinion is equally valid.
Right.
Right? So I'm saying the same thing. If you want to get into the deep grassroots discussion, you have my book. The first 200 pages is my arguments from Judaism, but after page 220, it's all historical, logical, and anybody, even non-Jewish people, have read my book and they understand it. But
say the title again.
The title is The Empty Wagon: Zionism's Journey from Identity Crisis to Identity Theft.
Okay.
Yeah, the title was based on a very famous story between David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel, and one of the greatest, maybe the greatest rabbi in Israel at the time. Rabbi Karelitz, his name was. The Ben-Gurion went to this rabbi to try to see whether the Orthodox Jews and the Zionists can live in peace, if it's compatible. And Rabbi Karelitz came out, no, it's not. There's no way we could be partners. Can't. So Ben-Gurion said, so what do we do? Then what do we do? We're here in the same country. So Rabbi Karelitz told him there's a Jewish law from the Talmud that if there are two wagons on a one-lane street, one-lane path, coming in different directions at each other, so which wagon has to move over to make room for the other? So the law is, in Jewish law, that if one wagon is full and the other is empty, the empty wagon has to move over off the road to let the full wagon pass. Said Rabbi Karelitz to Ben-Gurion, Zionism and Judaism are at loggerheads here. Judaism is a full wagon. Zionism is an empty wagon. You have to make room for us. That's the title of the book, The Empty Wagon.
Well, Rabbi Shapiro, how can people find more of your commentary?
They can put my name into YouTube. Most of my commentary is on other people's podcasts because I've kind of neglected mine for a while because I've been invited to other people the last couple of years who have greater reach than me. Put my name, Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, into YouTube, or buy my book. I have a podcast called Committing High Reason, committinghighreason.com. I'm a member of the ICMES, International Council for Middle East Studies. We're not really active these days, but there's a website there with material, icmes.net. And just follow my podcast and my YouTube channel.
Well, I'll say something, Rabbi Shapiro. I've had over 2,700 episodes of this program, and you have all different sorts of guests, and every once in a while you come across one. It's like pulling teeth to get them to talk. And thank heavens you are not one of these guests. This was extremely valuable and interesting, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Make yourself and those you love less vulnerable to the regime, both mentally and physically. Get more forbidden information at tomsfreebooks.com and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. See you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.